Good morning everyone, and welcome to the Sunrise Safari. And it is definitely getting a little bit warmer here. It is 14 degrees, which is 67 in Fahrenheit. So definitely a noticeable change. Summer is very much on its way. And as we can see already, the sunrise is getting much earlier. And for those of you who don't know, my name is Jamie, and I will be on Jigger this morning with Andrew, the Aardvark, on camera with me. And Steph and Brian are on Wendy. They've headed off to check up on where Sandile was from yesterday afternoon's sunset safari. And we've got a very exciting morning planned. So last night, for those of you who were watching the Djuma Dam camera, you might have seen the briefest flash of a lion. And the Birmingham boys came all the way down south from Buffelshoek, and they called all the way through the night. It was absolutely incredible. Those of us who were staying at Inger's, which is the camp just here on Djuma, went out in the Mahindra and we sat with them, and we had all 5 Birmingham boys calling next to us. And I must say, it's a truly incredible experience. I've heard lions roaring a lot, but to have 5 male lions around your car just calling in the dark is really quite a goosebumps moment. It was really cool. So they walked all the way down south past the dam and all the way down Twin Dams Road, and we heard them calling long into the night. So I'm on my way towards Gowrie Main to see if they are really challenging the Matimbas. They were heading straight in the direction where the Matimbas were last seen, which was just south of our boundary. So exciting stuff planned. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is a live safari. So everything that you are seeing on your screen is happening in real life right here on Djuma Game Reserve. And it is also interactive. You can ask us questions or send through your comments. You could do so on #SafariLive on Twitter, or to questions@WildEarthTV. And before we rush off to those Birmingham boys, the sun is just making itself known through the clouds. I think it's going to be another scorching day here. And as dawn breaks here on the Sabi Sands, it's really quiet. All of the lions have gone completely still. And it does make me very curious as to what happened last night. The Matimba males have been fairly silent so far. We know that one of them was mating just south of our boundaries with one of the Styx females, and the other was seen on Chitwa. That was the last report I had of the Matimba boys. And it will be interesting to see if they respond to what was very definitely a show of strength from the Birmingham boys last night. The sun has made its way up, and it's time for us to go and find whatever animals are out there. Let's see what those Birmingham boys have been up to. Phenomenal to me, the speed at which animals can move through the bush when they want to. It must have taken those Birmingham boys maybe half an hour from the dam to get to south of our boundary, if that. Might even be on a mission. have a nice feeding group of kudu here. Now, it might be my imagination, but I don't think it is. There is definitely more moisture in the air. It has been very dry and hot over the last few days, but there's that incredible damp, earthy smell. And it almost looks as though these kudu are puffed up in the cold. But it's not that cold. I think there might be a little bit of dew just clinging to their fur. There's definitely more moisture in the air. I'm sure for these kudu that's a very welcome sign that the end of the dry season will be on its way. Still another 2 months before the proper rains come. But you can see how fluffed up and scruffy she looks this morning. Lots of bird noise at the moment. You can hear some green woodhoopers, or red-billed woodhoopers as I used to know them. Crested barbets, francolins, crested francolins. And as these kudus disappear into the thick block, we must continue our mission before there's too much traffic on Gowrie Main and we lose the chance to see if those Birmingham boys' tracks have gone across. And the last time that we knew of that there was a showdown between the Matimba males and the Birmingham boys was a couple of weeks ago with Brent. And there was lots of backwards and forwards, ultimately ending with the Matimbas chasing the Birmingham boys a little bit further north into Djuma, and then almost drawing a line in the sand at Gowrie Main. Judging from their tracks, the group split off into A and B. Some of them have gone left, the rest of them have gone right, around Twin Dams. last night when we were listening to the roar, Eugene raised a really, really good point about what it must feel like if you're a buffalo or any one of the prey species when you hear that in the dead of night. It must send chills of fear up their spines, especially because as they were roaring there was such an echo that we couldn't even tell exactly where they were when we first approached. So I can only imagine what it feels like to be a buffalo or any one of those prey species. We are right on Bowery Main, so our southern boundary, and just a couple of kilometers into the property on my left is where the Matimbas were last seen. Somewhat unexpectedly, I don't see any tracks coming out here just yet. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, I'm looking for a coalition of 5 young male lions who were shouting out and have started to cause quite a bit of chaos in this area in terms of disrupting the timber males from their territory and from their prides. And good morning, Kathy Ward. Welcome to the Sunrise Safari. You were wondering if we know if the Birmingham boys are related to each other, and yes, they definitely are in this case. I did a little bit of reading up into the history of the Birmingham boys, and they all came from the Birmingham Pride that was up in Tinswalu, so north of the Manuleti. And they were first seen together as a coalition in, I think it was 2012 in Tinswalu. And what actually happened was once they reached their sort of sexual maturity, their breeding age, they would have been pushed out. And somewhat ironically, from what I can tell, they were pushed out by the northern split of the Matimba coalition. And they split away with some of their sisters, but the Matimba males then pushed the sisters out away from the Birmingham boys and started mating with them, and the Birmingham boys continued on their quest for dominance. They've only just now reached the age where they can start competing for territory. That's very interesting. I have not seen one track come out here. And the end result of that means that we've got to loop back towards where I saw the last tracks and have a look and see which direction these boys have gone in. The nice thing about following the tracks of 5 male lions is that it's quite hard to miss those tracks. I shouldn't have said that. As we loop around this block, Blair has suggested that, or bets that, they are in this block somewhere on a buffalo kill. And that could well be. They are known to be prolific buffalo hunters, and I still haven't seen these tracks popping out anywhere on this side. I haven't seen any tracks of any fresh buffalo either though, but that doesn't mean that they weren't there spending the night close to the dam. As far as I know, it's actually been quite a while since they last ate, which would have been from that buffalo carcass that they stole from the Nkuhumas, or chased the Nkuhumas off, just a couple of kilometers to the north of where we are now. And that was a couple of days ago, so it could well be that they are hungry and it's time for them to eat. Sorry guys, just going to coordinate a bit of a search effort here. Good morning Diana, I'm also working around Twin Dams just to see where these and Dala have gone. Double checking the junction, make sure that they haven't come out here. Doesn't look like they did. I don't know where they've gone. Not seeing any tracks coming out of this block, which makes me think that Blair, you might be right, they could well be somewhere along in this block somewhere. While we have a look for them, I know that Steph would like to say good morning to you all and give you an update on his plans. And for now, we're going to cross across to Steph, and I'll be back with you later, hopefully with some more news as to the movements of the Birmingham boys.
Oh, good morning, and I just want to say hello to everybody. It's myself and Brian on Wendy today, and we've come into the area where Sindila was left last night to come and see if we can pick up any sort of sign or trail of what happened to him last night. Well, so far I can say that he's not where he was. I've walked around that area over there. I can't even find a track leaving, but I can say that he hasn't come across this road just yet. There's just been a hyena patrolling this road, which means that he's in all likelihood gone further down the drainage line, which is where we're going to be concentrating our efforts. See lots of hyena tracks coming in and out of here. I'm sure Jamie's been tracking these lion almost non-stop after seeing them last night. I'm very happy to hear that they've come back out of Buffelshoek. We were chatting yesterday about the possibility of them carrying deeper into Buffelshoek, and I'm very glad that they have decided that they are going to come back south. It means that they're sort of starting to describe their pride size or their pride territory, and I think it's going to be an interesting development over the next couple of weeks and months to see where they actually end up. Now, apart from there being some hyena on this road, I just saw a hippo track. Not much else is around, but that doesn't mean too much. Lots of hyena activity this morning. It's a fantastic morning. It's gradually getting lighter and lighter as we get to work. Myself and Brian were talking this morning about the fact that just in my memory it just seems like almost overnight it's become light when we arrive at the camp in the mornings. We're leaving at the same time. We're still leaving in the dark, but we're arriving in the light, which it's interesting how it just changes like this. Really, just all of a sudden. Nice and quick. Right. I'm fairly convinced that he didn't come this way. I think it could be a good idea to turn around here. Let's go up here. Come through the bottom of Impala Plains. See what's on the open area. Still not a single sign of that cheetah that we were looking for the other day. Not a track or another person seeing it. So I want to say that it was probably a leopard that was lying under the tree that the anti-poaching guy saw. Lots of leopard tracks, lots of hyena tracks around, but no cheetah. Quite cloudy on the horizon this morning. Sunlight sort of, or the sun itself trying to break through this band of clouds that's lying over the sea. As the seasons start to change, we're going to see these banks of clouds building up in the Mozambique Channel from here. These towering masses, sometimes up to 18,000 feet tall, and that's generally what brings our rain out here, is these very warm, very moisture-rich air currents coming in off the Indian Ocean, bumping against the escarpment, the Drakensberg, what we watched the sun go down behind last night, and as they rise up over the Drakensberg, dropping their moisture here. We don't get as much as what the mountains do, but nevertheless, the rivers that come into the park from that particular place all good. Most of them permanent. The closest one to where we are at the moment is the Olifant River, which translates to the Elephant River. Possibly because this time of the year, with the bush being as dry as what it is, there is a lot of elephants that congregate on the banks of this river. It's quite a rocky river, I must say. Almost its entire drainage line is strewn with rocks. And then as we go further south, the next big river that we get is the Sabi River, the River of Fear, named so after all the crocodiles that inhabit it. keeping my eye on the track, so excuse looking at the back of my head while we got to that junction. It's important that we keep an eye on the hyena tracks running. You can see them. 2 hyena tracks have joined one another. Walking down the road. Not uncommon to find 2, even 3 hyena walking together. If there was like 5 or 6 tracks of 5 or 6 hyena together, then I'd absolutely be, my interest would be piqued. But 2 hyena tracks together, not too much of a problem. Although they're walking fast, they're not running as they would if there was a kill in the area. Tracks back on the road again. And I must say that the thing that's keeping us most busy at the moment is, where are these hyena? Myself and Taxon passed one another a little bit earlier, and it was almost the first thing that he asked me was where these hyena have gone. So we had a short discussion, and we both feel that the hyena are on the eastern side of the reserve somewhere. We're seeing very few tracks over here, barring the hyena tracks that we're seeing now on the road. These 2 that we have here. One would think it would be quite easy to locate a hyena then, but with them walking the distances that they do, up to 60 kilometers in one night, definitely makes tracking them an exercise that I don't think I possess the skill for. I don't think with a helicopter and a telemetry set you could do what they do in an evening. Coming to some bumps, just have to realign myself over here. Okay, so no tracks cross over Impala Plains Road, which means that they're definitely, it would seem, that Sindila has gone a bit deeper into Arathusa, and so therefore dictates where we're going to be going next. It is going to require me to do a bit of a radio change to a different channel, and to get an update when I'm on that channel. I'm fully expecting my attention to be diverted. And listen for a little bit. We don't nearly listen enough, and it was one of the things that being a trails guide teaches you the first to do is to use your ears and use your other senses. A chin spot batters that's busy calling. franklins, laughing dove, crested franklin, long-billed cromback, bearded woodpecker, African hoopoo, Natal franklin, rattling testicular, alright, nothing that's giving us the indication that anything is close by. As far as we're concerned, the bush is as normal, no predators in it, nothing that's disturbing anything that's letting us know anyway. Doesn't mean too much, just means we need to up our game and carry on looking. So we're going to carry on driving. Fairly old track, as far as I can tell. Good thing to check on top of these termite mounds. The Sindila is definitely fond of using them. Alrighty, now I'm going to have to brave the storm that is the Arethusa radio channels. So just bear with me while I get an update. It's crazy. That is a crash cut thing. Did you also get that? Alright, so my signal's a little bit shaky from where it is at the moment, and I hear that Jamie's got some Birmingham boy tracks to give you an update on. So while we get to an area that's a little bit safer from a signal point of view, I'm going to send you back to Jamie and we'll catch up with you in a while. See you in a bit.
welcome back. And we did indeed find the tracks of the Birmingham boys, and unfortunately they have crossed right across our boundary. So they've moved right on the corner, the southeastern corner of Djuma, and they've crossed south. I'm not sure which property this is. I think it might be Chitwa, but they've crossed south just in here. And we've got some really nice, beautifully crisp tracks to show you. So let's just have a look at those quickly, and we'll see. I'll show you exactly where they have crossed. Let's grab a stick to help us have a look. Looking at this one.
The one just to your right.
This one.
Yeah, that one.
Here we have our beautiful male lion track. And for those of you who might be joining us for the first time and you're not too sure about tracking, the thing that really gives it away is its size. So absolutely enormous track. It is basically the size of my hand, some of these tracks. So really, really big. And then for big cats, this is how we determine what they are. We've got 4 toes in the front, and then a back pad with 3 lobes. And the 3 lobes is what differentiates the cats from hyenas and from other dog tracks. So dog tracks and hyenas have 2 lobes at the back. Big cats have 3. And these tracks continued up the road and then across at that junction. And then there's more tracks coming across here. So they've cut away into that property. And just while I've been looking at these tracks, I wanted to determine what sort of speed they were walking at. And all of the tracks, on all of these tracks here, the back track falls directly on top of the front track. Now that's known as registering, and it tells you a little bit about the speed and the mood of the animal. Now typically at their normal walking speed, lions register, so their back track falls exactly where their front track was, and that's a great adaptation to keeping things that much more silent as they're walking. Just reduces the amount of disturbance they cause to the environment. When that speed gets a little bit faster, the back track starts to overtake the front track and move further and further away from it. And the further away it is from the front track, the faster the animal was moving. So these guys were basically sauntering up the road at quite a relaxed pace. They weren't rushing. And it's anyone's guess, and I'm sure we'll hear from some of the other rangers as to where they are now and what exactly transpired last night. Now, as far as I know, we are maybe a kilometer or so from where that Matimba male was mating with a Styx female, to the best of my knowledge. And it does seem as though, it's hard to interpret, but I would say it does seem as though the Birmingham boys last night were launching a really serious challenge to the Matimbas. And it's up to the Matimbas now as to how they react. They could fight them, they could chase them back across the border. The one thing they do have over the Birmingham boys is age and experience. They are still bigger than most of those Birmingham boys, but unfortunately numbers are not on their side. So it's going to be interesting to see whether they decide to stay and fight or if they move off out of the area. We'll just have to wait and see. There's no way of knowing for sure at the moment. But our lions have crossed, and so it is time to go and look for other things and other animals in the area. We're going to loop back around. One of the guides told me that she thought she'd seen some leopard tracks on Nyala Road South. So we're going to head across in that direction and see what we can find there. watch this whole situation play out. Although in many circumstances it is somewhat difficult to watch, there is a level of natural brutality in terms of pride takeovers. It is interesting to see and learn from the way that the Birmingham boys have conducted this whole process. They have bounced about, they have travelled so many kilometres over the last 3 days, just moving from place to place and really exploring and just pushing the boundaries a little bit to see where there are weaknesses. With male lion coalitions, especially when you get groups of different ages, which is what we've got with the Birmingham boys, is that once the pride takeover does happen, which may take a couple of weeks or a couple of months, then there will be one or two of them that establish themselves as more dominant. And Joshua, you were wondering, will they fight amongst themselves, or how will it work in terms of establishing that hierarchy? So one of the things that will be involved will be age, especially in the beginning as these boys are still developing. So the one male, Blondie, as I believe he's been nicknamed, is a little bit older than the others. He looks to be about a year, maybe a year and a half older. He's got a full mane already. The others are still at that slightly teenage stage, a little bit lacking in terms of mane development. So he will initially establish dominance, but after that it becomes a matter of the character of the lion. So they all have their different personalities. Some of them are a little bit more aggressive than others. I've noticed that two of the young ones with the slightly darker manes, they are very, very large, even for their size. They look to be the youngest in the group, and they are very, very large. And I do wonder whether that will come into play over the next few years. And they saw it with the Mapojos as well, but with Mukulu, who is slightly older, so the Mapojo coalition was a coalition of 6 male lions. The oldest one pretty much was dominant most of the time, but it got to the point where he was in competition with Mr. T so often that eventually the coalition split off, and Kinky Tail and Mr. T, two of the youngest lions, went and ruled part of the territory, and the other 4 stayed back and ruled the other part of the territory. It's possible that we could see something happen like that with the Birmingham boys, but for now they are definitely going to be staying together, and Blondie will almost certainly be dominant. As to how it plays out over the next few years, it's pretty much anybody's guess. That there is a possibility that the Matimba males will leave the area in response to the Birmingham boys' challenge. I must be honest, I don't think that is what they are going to do. I think that their strongest instinct is going to be to stay and fight, but it is a possibility that they choose to move out of the area just in response to a very, very powerful challenge from those Birminghams. And Lauren, welcome to the Sunrise Safari. It's great to have you on board with us. Lauren, wanted to know if it would be possible, if the timbers left, would it be possible for the lionesses or some of the lionesses to leave with them. Some more kudu in front of us. I'm just going to shift forward to this lady. Oh, sorry girl, I'm going to give you a fright. And Lauren, it is possible for lionesses to move out of the area, especially those with young cubs, so that Styx female may well try and leave to ensure the safety of that one remaining, or the one surviving Styx cub that we've been watching over the last couple of months. So she could try and leave. It does happen with the odd pride, and it's actually sometimes the reason behind a pride split, especially for the bigger prides, where some of the females have cubs and a pride takeover happens. Those females with cubs tend to move out if they can. It's just a matter of timing and whether or not they can escape before their cubs are killed. Generally, the lionesses will stick around and stay in the area that is familiar to them. So it's unlikely that they will follow the Matimbas in any way, even if just for protection. They'll probably stay here, and the Birmingham Boys, they will become subservient to the Birmingham Boys coalition. Oh, kudu are just moving off. Little one. And all kudu have enormous ears, but they always look that much bigger on the younger ones. Those ears look absolutely enormous and tilted backwards like little radar dishes, and off in different directions, just to make sure she keeps an ear out for whatever we're doing as she walks away. I'm seeing lots and lots of fresh ellie tracks and ellie dung on the road. I haven't heard any signs of elephants there, but we'll keep our eyes peeled for the big dark grey shapes that disappear so well into the bushes. Here's all the ellie dung in the road. Very definitely a breeding herd walked down here at some point, probably last night. Moved around a bit. And it is starting to get to that stage of summer, or at least spring, where I'm a little bit reluctant to drive over the dung piles that we see, just because they are host to so many dung beetles and various species of insects. I do try and avoid them in summer when I can. It has reached that point. I'm definitely noticing more insects out and about. I'm just hopping out to grab this branch just to show you a really good example of evidence of ellies. And I also want to, now that I've mentioned it, I want to just have a look at the dung piles and see if there's any insects to show you in them. And this is still wet, so the Ellie's stripped away the bark, eaten some of the bark, chewed a little bit in places. Looks like it was a weeping wattle, so Peltiforum africana. Here's the leaves there. Also known as the toilet paper tree, due to the dense nature of the leaves, as well as the lack of thorns. So the Ellie's come by, he's pulled this right out of the ground. This is the root base. So quite literally ripped it out of the ground and then stripped away the bark, had a chew, and it is still damp, which tells me that these guys were here sometime last night. And I'll pop that down for now. Just have a look, see if I can find. No, that Ellie Dug's not fresh enough for me to pick up too many of the beetles that I was talking about. It might have termites in it, but I'm looking for a nice fresh pile so we can see if the dung beetles and the other insects that feed off fresh dung, I want to see if they have started returning to us now that the temperatures are warming up. Also, I just want to sit for one moment quietly. I'm sure I just heard the grey-headed bush shrike calling. I heard them earlier this morning. It's the first time I've heard them in in a season. It's getting to be their breeding time, and it's a very low, very mysterious whistle. It's actually the reason that they have the name in Afrikaans. They're known as the spookvoël, or the ghost bird. It's quite an eerie, haunting sound. Of course, now that I've mentioned it, he stopped doing it, but I know I heard it. And they're known as the ghost bird because they make that funny, that very mysterious whistle, but they're also very cryptic. They tend to hide away in the dense bushes, so you don't often see them, you only hear them. But he stopped calling now. If we can get into these two. Before I head in that direction, which I am going to do, I just wanted to stop for a moment. Let's just have a look, see if I can get a way in. So there are two battaliers, and we can actually hear them, which is why I've stopped. And I'm going to move closer so we get a nice view. I did just hear one of them call. And I've seen this pair a lot on Leadwood Road, which is where we are now. This is part of the core part of their territory. Let's try and loop around to them. See if we can get them nicely highlighted in the sun. They are one of the most striking raptors, really, really beautiful birds. It's a bit of a thick block and I don't want to scare them away. I might be able to squeeze in here. And just as we arrived, the male flew off, but we still have the incredibly striking female. There you go. Incredibly beautiful birds with that striking red face and that white band of feathers across the base of her wings. That is what tells us it's a female. The males don't have that white strip. And that is one of the other really cool things about Battalias, is they're one of the few raptors that you can actually tell the difference between male and female completely based on coloration. And given their incredibly prominent stature and those bright striking colors, there are lots and lots of local beliefs surrounding the Batalia. A lot of the cultures believe that they are an embodiment of the god or the creator of this land, and that they watch over, that they were there at the beginning of time watching the first sunrise, and they will be there to watch the last sunset over Africa. And it's considered to be incredibly bad luck to be defecated upon by a Batalia. If that hapless person does happen to experience that, they have to be sent to a Sangoma or a local witch doctor to be cleansed of whatever evil spirits might be attracted to it. And you can see why such a striking bird has inspired so many different beliefs. I just think you would have to be considerably unlucky to be defecated on by a Batalia in the first place. She seems to be just resting on one claw. I'm not sure why. I think that it's possibly just the way that we shift our weight around in terms of leaning on one hip over the other. I don't think she has any injury. And you can see it's very, very clear as we look at her now how short that tail is, almost completely lacking. We can see the wingtips protruding over that branch and almost meeting in the middle. But where in most birds there'd be a nice long stabilizing tail, the Batalia doesn't have one, which creates a very unsteady flight at high altitudes, which is why they have that incredible rocking motion as they fly. But it's a perfect adaptation for this environment because they can swoop low and move quickly under the canopies of trees and keep an eye out for their prey that's on the ground. She's sitting up there on a knobthorn, nice and clear from foliage. It's a perfect vantage point as she surveys her territory. This particular mated pair that I've seen around Leadwood Road fairly regularly, they have a juvenile, or they had a juvenile with them, and juvenile Batalias are very funny looking birds. They have the same shape as the adult, slightly longer tail and a very, very fluffy head, but they are completely brown and nondescript. They don't have that incredibly bright plumage of the adults, which makes them a little bit more tricky to identify until you see that very scruffy head and the shortened tail. and it can take them up to 7 to 8 years to reach that adult plumage. But the juvenile I've seen with them over the last few weeks doesn't appear to be here. Might be that he's off on his own now and fending for himself, because they don't stay with their parents for those 7 to 8 years. They will be independent after 1 or 2, as far as I know. So mom and dad might have kicked him out of the house, so to speak, and he's off to fend for himself. It's one thing that I've noticed about battaliers as well as goshawks. They both have those very, very highlighted faces in that bright red, and they also, though we can't see it that clearly on her now, they also have very red legs. They're not feathered as an adaptation to allow the bird to really see where they're putting their feet. And I've always been curious as to why they do have that incredible bright coloring on their face and on their legs. I don't have an answer, I'm just putting it out as a question for you. It could be a breeding tool, but again, both the males and the females have it. And I thought maybe it might be some way helpful in their hunting techniques in terms of catching snakes. But again, the brown snake eagle and the black-chested snake eagle, they don't have those brightly colored parts. So I don't have an answer to that question, I'm just putting it out there as one of the many things that maybe we might never have an answer to. And we were just chatting a little bit about the juvenile battalier that I've seen. And Beth from Melbourne, welcome to the Sunrise Safari. It's fantastic to have your question, and please keep sending through as many as you like. Now, Beth would like to know if we ever see baby battaliers. And if we do find a nest site, then yes, we do. We'd have to watch carefully. You're only going to see the chicks are born very, very dependent on the parents, fairly featherless, rather ugly looking for little baby, as little baby chicks often are. And if we do find a nest, and they tend to, as far as I know, they tend to have the messy raptor nests in open knob thorns, and you see battaliers nesting, then you can go and watch. And if you're really nice and patient, you might get to see the chick's head popping itself up over the top as it grows older. And typically, although most raptors lay 2 eggs, usually the second chick won't survive. If it hatches after the first chick, it is just generally outcompeted and bullied by the older chick. It is essentially just an insurance policy. And over the next few months, the parents will feed it very, very carefully. They look after it incredibly well until it grows and fledges. And I think, I'm not entirely sure, but I think the fledging age is around 6 months. And by a year old, they're flying around with their parents. They've pretty much reached their full size. And then by a year old to 2 years old, they will be out on their own and independent, but still not with their full breeding plumage. So there's a lot of investment that goes into raptor chicks and the raising of them. And they can live, raptors can be incredibly long-lived birds. I know there are records of birds of prey living over 20 years. So the battaliers are amongst those incredibly long-lived bird species. So lots of time to breed and procreate and survive out here in a rather harsh world. And speaking of harsh worlds, just while I've seen it, I'm just going to go and grab something that I've spotted. Tangled. Here we go. And there we have a beautifully intact giant land snail shell. And this shell is fairly big and complete, unlike the broken one which I found the other day. So to give you a scale, my hand, this is my hand, and definitely not the biggest giant land snail I've ever seen, and it's been dead quite a long time, possibly died of natural causes, but might also have been picked apart by a bird or something like a civet, a foraging civet or a jackal. They also like to feed on them, and it's a very good way of obtaining nutrients in the same way people feed on snails. And they don't have this white color when they're alive. This has been bleached by the sun, and the brown keratin sheath that surrounds it has worn away, and all that we're left with is this calcified shell. Really quite beautiful in its own way. And you might have noticed when I picked it up, I checked inside it quite carefully, and there's a reason for that. I've often done a lot of guided bushwalks where I've shown guests these, and I've picked them up without really thinking about it and showed them and let them handle them. And the one day I was very fortunate, I just happened to look inside and I discovered a whole load of reptile eggs, fresh, alive reptile eggs. And we were never able to work out if they belonged to a snake or possibly a chameleon. It was difficult and we didn't want to disturb them in any way. But apparently the inside cavity of giant land snail shells makes for a really good protective little sheath for a reptile to come along and lay their eggs. So it's amazing how even in death everything has a function out here. And the rest of the snails won't be out just yet. They will be hibernating in rock crevices and in safe places. They form a nice crusty sort of layer along the base of the shell. They tuck themselves in and they spend the winter there. Only when it starts to rain will we start to see them coming out and moving through the area, and they will continue on their way looking for mainly carcasses. They are carrion feeders, so they'll be out looking for bones and other pieces of carrion. And my shell use is done, and it's been used as a demonstration. There's nothing inside it that I can see, but that is where I found the eggs it was about 2 years ago now that I found the reptile eggs in there. You can see it's a nice perfect cavity, and probably a really, really good strategy, because nothing's going to come and check out an obviously dead snail shell for what's inside it. But now that I know that, I have a policy of always returning the shells back where I found them, which is what I'm going to do now. And I'm not going to throw it because it will break. Return it to nature so that possibly, just in the slim chance that something like a snake or a chameleon might come along to find it has something to hide its eggs in. Thoughts just occurred to me, and I wonder if tortoises ever eat those shells, because they must be very high in calcium. And tortoises do come around and chew on bones and eggshells, especially when females are laying their eggs. So I do wonder if there's a possibility that tortoises might chew on the shells as well. acquired a stick passenger. A very determined stick passenger. Trapped under my wheel wells. There you go. Got rid of it. And we have some wonderful news from Steph. Now, we haven't seen this particular animal in quite a long time, so I'm sure you are all excited to go and see a hyena. And we will catch up with you a little bit later.
And Brian and I finally managed to show you something. Here we have a spotted hyena busy eating something in the grass. We were driving along, following a tipple from an anti-poaching squad, and we managed to bump into this hyena. He or she, I'm not too sure which one it is at the moment, just walking along casually in the bush, and all of a sudden broke into a trot. And when we managed to relocate this hyena, it is eating something here in the grass. We still don't know what it is, to be honest. The hyena has lifted its head once or twice since we've been here, completely ignoring us. And every time with a mouth that's empty, no fur, no nothing. Or he's chewing on a bone, or a piece of old skin or something. That doesn't look like he's stolen the kill from anybody. It just looks like there just happened to be a piece of meat lying over there, left over something, bone or... Now, being the opportunists that hyena are, very often they will even cache kills, or cache meat. They do it in pans and dams. In this particular case, I think this was just a leftover, maybe a piece that dropped off after a squabble last night or something. Even though hyena are very adept at hunting their own food, in this particular case, I think this hyena just got lucky. Very good condition, this hyena. Lots of fur. Hasn't got that raggedy look that old hyena have got, where they have no fur on their faces and they're almost hairless. He was a tall, very good condition. Jaw and skull massively overdeveloped. There we go. You can see not a small hyena, fairly large one. Let me have a look at my binoculars and see if I can. Oh, there we go. Finished whatever it was. A very distinct sloped back design, a body design that is keyed for endurance. Have a look at the funny way it's walking. The back feet following in the back left foot following in the front right foot. Keep on going. We might lose this. So what we're going to do is try to relocate this hyena for you and send you back through to Jamie while we try and do it. This is a very bad signal area. We'll see if we can catch up with that hyena. We'll give you a shout in a bit.
Welcome back, and great news that we got to finally see a hyena. They've been strangely mysterious for such bold animals over the last week or so. We have a nice herd of waterbuck. moving along our eastern boundary. They are surprisingly skittish. I'm not sure if something that they've smelt, although I suppose the possibility of 5 male lions roaring in the area throughout the night might be a contributing factor. Just highlighted by those wonderful white ringed rumps. It was actually surprisingly complicated to say, white ringed rump. Very beautiful, fluffy looking antelope. They do look incredibly cuddly, but they carry with them quite the smell. Very pungent odor. And I don't have James's way of describing certain smells, but if I could, it smells like a combination between an elephant in must and a wet dog. That's the only way I can think of describing it. And that actually is a natural part of them. It comes from the oil that they secrete to help waterproof that thick fur. With a name like waterbuck, as you can imagine, they do like to spend some time in the water, but they also need that thick insulating layer to keep them from getting too cold. I'm going to move forward a little bit. Let's see if we can catch them as they cross the road. As I mentioned before, they are a little bit skittish, so I don't want to disturb them too much. Pretty girl. Just been listening to some of the updates on the Game Drive channel, and there was quite an interesting report that the Shumungwes have been around the southern section of Buffelshoek, and I'm going to be making my way across to that side very slowly, working my way that side. So the Shumungwes or the Shumungwe split, as far as I can understand, used to be a very large pride that has, over the last few years, suffered some losses and some hardships. And the Shumungwes that we've seen consisted only of 3 sub-adults. And I'm very curious as to why they would choose to move in this direction with the Birmingham boys shouting as they were last night. It seems like a somewhat foolish decision on their part. Our waterbuck have crossed, and I think we should go and check Buffelshoek Dam and just see if there's been any action there during the last evening. Now, for those of you who didn't know, Brent actually saw a leopard who's been around this area for a while, and he's completely unknown to most of the guides. We don't know who he is or where he came from. He may well have come from Kruger. Very, very skittish boy, but quite a big boy. I suspect that he was the one who was seen mating with Karula in Buffelshoek about a month ago when I first started working for Wild Earth, and I've only ever had brief visuals of him. But let's head across in that direction and see if we can see any sign of him moving around that area. the nature of the weather at the moment, that there's moisture content as well as a great deal of dust in the air, which is making me sneeze and cough. Just sticking to the screen a little bit. Andrew spotted a bird. Hopefully he sticks around. Oh, cool! That's awesome! And this little red-billed hornbill is doing something that you usually see right in the middle of winter, but he's doing it very successfully now. He's just, you can see him pecking in there, just collecting the last few termites who are out and about. They will shortly all be going to bed. But I think what he's also doing is sitting right on top of that termite mound vent. Now, termite mounds do generate a great deal of heat deep down in the system because they are underground, they get a lot of sun, and there's a lot of metabolizing organisms within them. So they produce a lot of heat, and in order to keep that temperature fairly constant, they have a system of vents that keeps it at around an internal temperature of either 32 degrees or 37 degrees, depending on which particular species of termites we're talking about. And very, very often you find hornbills on chilly mornings sitting on the top there and taking advantage both of the warm air flowing out of those vents as well as the chance to snack on the various termites that are in the mound, which is exactly what this little one is doing. You can see he's taking the job very, very seriously. Very well spotted, Andrew. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And the species of termite that inhabit these particular mounds, if it is the harvester termite or one of the farmer termites, what they do is they actually, because there's certain parts of the plant that they can't digest, so the cellulose aspect of it, what they do is they farm a certain type of fungus known as the tomatomyces fungus, and they use them to help break down the cellulose plant material, and in return they cultivate them as kind of the farmers of the insect world. So they cultivate that fungus, they keep the temperature perfect for them, provide them with a food supply, and then utilize the waste products from this fungus. And they farm them at the expense of all other types of fungus that might try and grow. The termites will get rid of them. So a really, really cool example of mutualism in a perfect little, almost isolated ecosystem there. The hornbill is still trying to see what he can catch. And hornbills are fantastic opportunists, and we see them in such a wide variety of situations, whether it's pecking through buffalo dung for the termites there, or the ants or whatever else they might find, right through to taking advantage of termite mounds and following behind foraging groups of dwarf mongoose. And I would say that makes them very clever birds, except for the fact that there's two of them at camp at the moment who insist on fighting with their reflection in my window at a specific time in the afternoon. So the sun catches the window perfectly at around 1 o'clock, and the hornbills then respond to their reflection by throwing themselves repeatedly against the glass. So I've made sure now that I keep the curtains pulled so that they don't injure themselves or cause any damage to the window. got something. No. Down the hatch. Wonderful red-billed hornbill sighting. And we shall leave him to his breakfast now, as he sits perfectly framed. The purpose of both heating himself up as well as catching a little bit of a snack along the way. But we have animals to find, so we shall hit the road.